So start making a document. All right, 8.5 by 11. All right, I'm just going to make a new artboard in mine, and we're trying to find ways to not have to necessarily draw things. All right, that's what I think the benefit of learning these different tools are. Some of you can draw very well. All right. Others, we need a little more practice at it. So if you can't, we're trying to show you different ways that you can do stuff in Illustrator. So the first thing we're going to look at is creating brushes. All right, so on our page here, if you haven't used the brushes yet, you would select the tool here, all right, and then you can start off, or actually what you probably want to look at is the brush panel. All right, that has all the different types of brushes available as presets. Now I have a couple more here from the earlier on, but you'll see these are your standard ones. They have different sizes. So if I click and drag here, I would get a simple one there. If I click on the next one, obviously you can see it's a lot bigger. If you go down here, you can click and you see that you have some little more artistic brushes. It's got some, I guess what they'd call stippling there. All right, which it's kind of rough around the edges. All right, so get a couple basic brush strokes in there. Now, as I was mentioning for your landscape project, I'm just going to want to see that you've used the brush somewhere in there. So maybe you're making blades of grass, or maybe some stars in the sky or something like that. All right. So I'm going to kind of leave it a little bit more up to you as far as what kind of objects are in your landscape, as long as you're using some of these tools. All right. So these are the basic ones. And then what's important to know also is at the bottom left of your brush panel, you have libraries. All right, so these are ones that aren't in here by default. So I think the kind of nice ones to start off possibly with would be, what was it, the decorative and actually elegant curl and floral sets. So look at all these, and so you can actually draw with these types of brushes. Or what's actually interesting too is that if you were to draw a shape, all right, and then choose this, you kind of, now they don't always display maybe the way you might think they would, but you can get some interesting types of stroke effects to your objects as well. So there are some options there. That was in this elegant curl brush set. If I go back down here and we can look under, I think this is the one I was using in the morning, vector packs, and then grunge and hand-drawn brush packs here. So you see some different types of lines which you can then draw with. Now for different effects, obviously they're going to be better or, you know, or maybe relevant or not. But I would like you to see for the demo having a couple of the presets and one from a library. Right? And everybody see how we got to the library for the brushes? Anybody not?
I did see it,
So at the bottom of your brushes, it looks like a little stack of books on the bottom left. We go into that brush library, and then I would suggest the grunge or hand-drawn. I wonder what these image brushes are. Oh, here's some more borders. So these are kind of cool too. You can, you know, get some different types of looks with that. And as I mentioned too, these can be used for stroke effects. So if you wanted to have like a spiral edge, right, you can have something with that to kind of go around. This would look like some chain links, right, and stuff like that. And I'm sure you can go online and search for Illustrator brushes. Like Brush Easy is a really good site that has downloadable brushes if you see something with that. We are going to get into, when we get into our portrait project, we'll really be spending time creating like original brushes and things that simulate like pencils and things like that a little bit more. But for now, we're just kind of getting started and seeing what we can do with some pre-made stuff. All right, so did I put any notes here? Yeah, all right, so, and I did write some notes underneath there, which I think will be helpful as you get to them. So brushes, or brush thickness, can be changed by changing the stroke and color. More brushes can be found in the brush libraries, and the shape can be adjusted using the direct selection tool. So we started looking at that on Thursday, where if we use the white arrow, actually not, I'm sorry, not the direct selection, we have to go into the pen tool and use the anchor point tool, so we could kind of grab that, and then you can start changing the shape of this stuff to make it, whatever shape you want. So that's, I'm going to change this to the anchor point tool. Yeah.
Can you do the same thing with the dog?
Alright, so we can go to the symbol library, and you see here that you have a flower. You can kind of, make that, and then we have clouds in here, which I think that is not a default one, right? You guys probably don't see the cloud from default. So just like with the brushes, if we go down to the bottom here, our symbol library, and I think I went to flowers. All right, and we'll do something with this so I can show you how you can really take advantage of these symbols and kind of customize that, and we'll kind of make some changes to them. So grab a flower. All right, did everybody find a flower? All right, and now, actually make a couple copies of it.
Oh, man.
Let's have 3 total. So that was on the bottom of our symbol panel. We go to libraries, and then I went to flowers. Now let's say you had 50 of these flowers. All right, and you wanted to change the color of the white part on the top in here. All right, it would take a long time to go back and really change each one of them without kind of changing the rest of it. So what you can do is if you double click it, it says you're about to edit the symbol definition. Yes, that's what we want. All right, so we would double click it to get into kind of the isolation mode. And what else? Seems like it's all grouped here, but it's telling me it's not grouped. Maybe what I would do is then use the direct selection tool.
Wouldn't you just expand it first, the same way you do demonstration?
Yeah, okay, yeah, I keep double clicking here. I didn't realize that there were all these subgroups. All right, so you have all these groups here, right? Of all these different things. So instead of this part being white now, I can make this red. And now if I go back, it's changed it on all of them. All right, so the power of that would be is if you have this symbol, right, you can just edit the one, and then it's going to apply it to all those. So symbols are really good for, maybe for some objects that are used a lot of times. Create a symbol for an object used repeatedly. And what we're saying there is that if you change the one instance, it will apply to the rest, right? So editing so that could be pretty useful, right? Now, there is this thing though they talk about on page 51. So that would be a dynamic type of symbol. So number 10, a dynamic symbol will update when a change is made, or it'll update all them. You also can create what's called a static symbol.
What's dynamic?
Dynamic means, you know how I just changed the color on the one of them, and it changed all of them? That's what they're talking about as being dynamic. Yep. So I didn't have to go back and change the details of all of them. It just automatically did that. I just kept clicking because remember we talked about being in isolation mode, and sometimes things are grouped.
Well,
S-
yeah, I got it.
All right. Um, so that's our. So what we could do, and so you can draw something, and this is kind of what we did in the morning. We drew a shape, right? This kind of like this. So let's make a symbol from some shapes, right? So if we go in here, we could have a square maybe, and then like an ellipse intersecting with it. You can change the color of that. Right, so all you have to do to make a symbol is you would select both of them and just drag it into the symbol panel. And here's where it's giving us the option. So do we want it to be dynamic or do we want it to be static? All right. Typically, I would think you would want it to be dynamic, because then if you draw a series of these, all right, and then we wanted to change the color, we just double click it, we go into that symbol editor, change it to something else, and then voila, they all change by doing that. All right, so you would just take those shapes and drag it to your symbol library. You see that it makes one, and then you have something like that happening. All right, so let's say we have, you kind of start drawing your grass or something. All right, so, and actually this section here that we're going to talk about is graphic styles. And they're different than symbols because they're not really objects themselves, but they affect the appearance of some other type of object. All right, so if we draw a rectangle, all right, and maybe we want to do like a gradient for something like our grass. If we were to look at something like that, like in our landscape, so I can draw some colors on here. Maybe a light green to a dark green, and then I can change my angle so it's kind of more up and down. But now we have these textures, and if we drag this onto here, no, oh, there we go. So it does affect the edges also, though. I don't know if I really like that too much, but we can see that it is having an effect. I kind of like that one a little bit better. All right, because if you just had this by itself, it doesn't really work. So these graphic styles have to be applied to something. All right, so all right, but that would be a lot easier than going in there and drawing this by hand, right? So we have these different textures that are available, which you can apply it to text. That's weird. You could get some water looking to it, right? And it gives you some nice tool tips on there. Ocean ridges, all right, which looks like some bevel and a embossed type of effect. Maybe a brick type of design, but you do have some grass, different ones with that. All right, so I would like you guys to apply a graphic style to some type of shape. And we will definitely, I would like you to incorporate some textures in your landscape. So just added that to my list there. All right, let's go on there from there.
The last library we will look at involves patterns. We actually saw this earlier, as patterns are artistic swatches. I still have the swatches panel up. I'll make a copy of the star we added a gradient to earlier. There are a couple of built-in patterns we can use, and I will try one here after, making sure that I have the fill and not the stroke in the foreground. But that doesn't really fit a star. I'll go to the swatches library and put the drop-down arrow and patterns, and then decorative and Fonster patterns. Vortex 1 pattern to the start.
That does offer an interesting effect, though I don't know if this will make the final coupon.
All right, so if we come back here and we make another shape, all right, we'll see that we can go to our swatch panel, and there are some preset ones in here. So just looking at these, we have something like this, leaves, all right, some more realistic and unrealistic ones. We have their floral pattern. All right, so these are all swatches, which if you don't have them, the same ones I do, you would just go to your swatch library. Some of them are just, actually a lot of them are just kind of color tones, but if you go into here and in our swatch library, that was under, what was that, nature? I think, oh, those are still colors. Where were these? Patterns. That's where it is. So you have 3 in the patterns, all right? So you have animal skins. You can kind of get some different types of stuff in there. All right, so they're artistic swatches, and then we're going to say, to kind of get to them to remember, so we're going to say the swatch library, and then we went to patterns, and then choosing one from there. All right, so make a shape and apply a pattern from the swatch library to that. All right, and now I think we're going to go into kind of creating some custom ones. Actually, I talked about creating the swatches. I don't think I talked about creating a graphic symbol.
Earlier we saw how symbols are added to an illustration. Let's see how we can make a symbol out of an existing object. First, I'm going to select a small shape inside of this background.
All right, we did that.
Then into these symbols. And if you do not, the background symbol, then take a look at this. Because the symbol is dynamic, every instance of the symbol updated to the new color. This is one advantage of using symbols. Color for an outro to it. Then I will select this and drag it into the graphic styles panel. This did not prompt us for a name, so I'll double click the style and name it light blue on blue. That really is the only editing option you have for a graphic style. Then I will drag the new graphic style on top of the star. The extra shapes don't show here because they are separate shapes. They are not part of the fill or stroke for the blue background.
All right, and lastly, patterns.
Lastly, let's build a pattern, specifically a pattern swatch. You may recall that we actually did one of these earlier in this domain. Let's take our time with this one. I'm going to take and select this entire green background with the added art. And then I'm going to drag this selection into the swatches panel. Then I will deselect the object. To name the swatch, I'll make sure the swatch is selected, and then I will click the swatch menu.
All right, so I didn't think it was that easy. Because what I was trying to do with this other document open, so I was going to try to make this into a pattern, which then I could have it kind of put into this shape here. So let's see if we just go to our swatches panel, which I got so many open now, it's hard to find it. Here it is. So if I drag this over to here, yeah, it didn't like that. Usually they'll give you a pop-up message why something's not working. I wonder, so let's see if I go to objects. I have to look into that a little bit more, but that's kind of the overview, I think, of all those tools in there. So these are more things that you have available, so you don't necessarily have to draw everything in your landscape. All right, but we learned about brushes and symbols, patterns, graphic styles. All right, so please have something, to illustrate those different points on here. And this should go into your summary today for that.